Child Labor in the 18th and 19th Centuries by Isabel Wilkins. During the Industrial Revolution, child labor was a tragic reality. Children provided for their families even before they had a chance to be a child. Laborers did what they had to do to remain in a job and off the streets. Both children with families and children without worked for a day's pay so they could continue to have water, a meal, and maybe even a blanket at night. Their work then became the cause of a double burden, providing for their family and providing for themselves. Although the life of a child is one that should be full of wonder and comfort, learning to be a child came second to providing for their family and themselves. Beginning from terrifyingly young ages, children started working in factories and on farms. Agriculture was a huge industry. Families lived on farms and obtained their income from working fields, growing crops, and caring for animals. During the Industrial Revolution, children were not held back from the harsh conditions of farm life. As a child day laborer, the youth would complete jobs such as weeding corn and hoeing turnips. Working in an agricultural setting required that children learn fast and start early. Obtaining complicated farming techniques needed to be acquired as soon as possible. While working on large acreage, life was easier when they understood what needed to be done. Children were not working a 9-to-5 desk job. They worked before the sun rose and after it set. To learn this fast-paced routine, on-the-job training was the typical style of teaching children how to maneuver on a farm. This allowed for the children to immediately start their labor and learn at the same time. The landowners could not waste any time putting their laborers on the job. As for the younger children, similar tasks would be placed on children as young as 6. They would complete odd jobs such as scaring birds from crops. These younger children were not physically or mentally capable of completing tasks equivalent to those of picking cotton or weeding crops, especially for the long hours in a day. They were inexperienced and their little bodies were not strong enough to do such hard work, but they still needed to support their families in some way. While some girls were employed, boys were the greater percentage of the positions. Although there were farms to work on, many young boys were employed in apprenticeships or as errand boys. In the year 1871, the percentage of boys ages 10 to 20 employed as apprentices were mostly messengers, 62.2%, and working in cotton factories, 35.7%. In these positions, boys were not required to learn challenging skills, which meant that they did not need to be instructed in school. For most families, school was out of the question. It was expensive and hard to come by because the boys were obligated to bring money home to their families. Making time for school was far out of reach. These jobs were not only the opportunities, there were many others such as railways, road transport, engineering, shipbuilding, woolen and worsted, coal mining, glass and pottery, iron and steel, and more. Boy labor was desired over girls because it entailed harsh working conditions like engineering. Although most of the labor that occurred during the Industrial Revolution was in England, many Dutch countries also had a part in the vicious cycle. Most children working in the Dutch Republic were orphans. Children hired out by the textile industry owners who were not orphans were in short supply. Orphans were easier to use because their bosses knew they would be reliable in making it to work and able to come as early or stay as late as needed. Their work lives were not imbalanced by their homes and families. For orphans in Leiden, between the years of 1607 and 1623, 84% of boys and 73.5% of girls were employed in the textile industry. Orphans were cheap labor and able to remain at work. This benefited them because they could earn money to survive until the next day. Child labor affected children of all ages, including children under the age of 10. Robert Collier, born 1823, recalls when he, a boy of 7, found himself standing next to children of similar ages in a spinning factory. He was there 13 hours a day, 5 days a week, and 11 on Saturday. William Arnold, born 1860, recalls when he was only 6 years and 2 months old, when he was watching over flocks of sheep and groups of pigs. The sense of loneliness and responsibility frequently overcame me, and in my desperation I would shout, "Mother, mother, mother," but mother could not hear. She was away that time working in the hayfield 2 miles away. There are thousands more stories like these, of children terrified and wondering if they were ever going to see their families again. Child labor ripped the childhoods away. They were not allowed to be a kid. A life of luxury, freedom, or independence was a distant dream for them. For some, from the age of 6 until they died, these children labored. The amount of loneliness children went through is unbearable and unthinkable. Once children like William Arnold began work, they realized life as they knew it was over. These stories are not based on a true story. They are true stories. Children like Robert and William from all around the world suffered traumatic events during the Industrial Revolution. These children were expected to provide the same amount of work as adults and receive less than unequal pay. Unfortunately, child labor has not departed. Child labor is still very much a part of the world's society, mostly, however, in underdeveloped countries. In these countries, child labor, such as child exploitation, continues to remain an issue. During the child labor revolution, boys were favored over girls. Boys would almost always outnumber girls and would snatch up more laborious jobs. Out of all the children in the world, more orphans than not would work in factories. Children from the sweet age of 6 and older were expected to provide so much for their families and for themselves. A child should never have to provide meals or housing for themselves. However, the Industrial Revolution was of the time that required more of children. Pay was low, so more people had to contribute to the family unit. Unfortunately, the contributors had to be developing, youthful, tender children.